Happy to be here to give the seminar. I feel a little uncomfortable, in an Austrian building. I'm not like a blue blood Austrian economist, but I took the test on the internet, and I'm not socialist. I learned that. I'm 50-50. I'm Chicago / Austrian. But I got confused on some of the questions, so we need to talk. The questions are a little bit confusing, and sometimes I had a hard time choosing between the two. So my roots are really in market economics. I believe markets work and that governments try to mess with it, often successfully, but always with unsuccessful results. So that probably qualifies me as sort of an Austrian. This paper is about Croatia. Everybody here knows a little bit about Croatia. I'm sure it was part of Yugoslavia, and it's in a transition from socialism. So it's an ex-socialist country that's now moving toward market economics. It's Catholic. It's about as big as Alabama, has twice as many people as Alabama, and per capita income is about a quarter or so in Alabama. So that gives you a basis of comparison. I'll try to go through the paper quickly. I'm sure some people may have questions about Croatia. And I learned a little bit about the education system. That was a real eye-opener. But just the general impressions of the economy and also the country. But probably what I'll do first is go through the paper, in maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then look at some photos, which will be more fun than the paper, and then kind of throw it open to discussion. The paper is a specific factors model. Now, that may not mean much to anybody in here except a few misfits from economics. It's a neoclassical model. And if you study microeconomics, it's the last chapter in microeconomics. It's the general equilibrium chapter. And so it's mainstream old microeconomics, with marginal products, diminishing marginal productivity, all that stuff. But you look at the whole economy, and the specific factor refers to the fact that in this model, labor is assumed to be stuck in its industry. We have this input capital. Capital moves around. It can go between industries, and this paper has 23 different industries, but the workers are stuck for one reason or the other. They may be stuck because of their training, their background, or so on. I think in the long run, the assumption would be that the workers can move, but in this economic theory type, if you look at the theory of the paper, the workers are stuck. And what the paper does is look at Croatia's entry into the EU, and it makes the assumption that, which is probably reasonable, that Croatia is a small economy and a price taker in these 23 markets. And the markets are things like apparel and chemicals and so on. So it's probably a reasonable assumption. They're broad aggregates. And what the paper does, what we do is, I say I'll tell you who they are in a minute. We look at changes in prices across those industries and see how the economy adjusts. And the economy adjusts in economics and in the model along the production frontier. So you have adjustments due to prices. You have adjustments in outputs along the production frontier. And if you think of the contract curve, there are adjustments in factor prices or in the input prices, which is wages and rents. So all the wages and the rents in the economy are going to adjust to the new prices. And this model then tries to project how big those changes are going to be, how large the shocks are going to be for Croatia. Josip Funda is a young guy. He graduated from college and he's thinking of graduate school. He's either going to go to Germany or come to the U.S. He's interested in international finance, and he did the work, really. He did all the nuts and bolts work. Mia Mikic was actually at the University of Zagreb. Now she's working for the UN in somewhere, the Far East. I forget exactly where, but she just took a new job. She was raised in Australia. She's Australian, but came back and worked at. She was born in Zagreb, and from Zagreb, and then went back and worked there 6 or 8 years at the university. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the model. It is a general equilibrium model. So we're looking at adjustments in all the markets. So it's called the specific factors Ricardo-Viner model. Ricardo and Viner described it pretty well back, 200 years ago. Labor is specific to each of 23 industries. So that's kind of the structure. The industries are in agriculture, manufacturing, and services. And there's a capital input that's sort of the residual. This is not Austrian capital. We're not growing capital or anything like that. In fact, this is a comparative static model, so the time dimension is warped. It's just, we have this stuff that's not labor that's used by industries. It's like delivery trucks, and they can go from industry to industry depending on where they might get paid more, the capital. So the capital owners are going to put their stuff where, in the industries that are expanding with higher prices, and take it out of the industries where it's non-productive because of falling prices. So it's sort of mythical. I mean, the theory is mythical and the numbers are mythical in a sense. So it's not capital in any growth sense. We're not looking at economic growth. It's not a long-term model. It's like sort of the short or medium-term adjustment to these changing prices. Where are the delivery trucks going to go? And what's going to happen to the rent or the price on a delivery truck? Don't look at me like that. It's not that complicated. The model uses, you have to have a production function working in it, and it assumes what are called constant elasticity production functions. Cobb-Douglas is a common example. It's the simplest production structure you can assume, and I've done a lot of work with this type of production function and other estimated production functions, and they don't matter. The estimates don't matter, really. In the end, you can end up using constant elasticity. What really pushes these types of models are the shares of the inputs in the industry, how much they get paid, and also where they work, how much of the capital is in the different industries. That's what really pushes the results.
Is that one to think that the price taker is a pretty good model to fit with it as well, the constant elasticity?
Well, some people would disagree. I think it's okay at an aggregate level like this one. It may not be that good if you get down and looking at the actual adjustment in each industry. Especially, if you broke, for instance, chemicals down into 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 types of chemicals, then you might want more information about the actual production process. But at the aggregate level, Cobb-Douglas is not bad. There are studies these days that kind of show that. They compare simple production functions with more sophisticated estimates, and they don't matter. The sophisticated estimates really don't matter much. So the model assumes competition, cost minimization, and full employment. These assumptions can all be relaxed. At least the full employment assumption could be relaxed if you wanted to. So we're looking at the market forces at work, sort of the raw market forces. And then, of course, if you really wanted to delve into issues of unionization and so on, you could say, well, this model shows you the market forces. Now the question is, how is the union going to react? And we're adjusting along a contract curve or a production frontier. So we look at changes. We try to project changes for economic adjustment to the EU. The idea is that with entry, Croatia now is going to have to go with free trade with Germany, which is right next door, and of course the rest of the EU. And then also Croatia is going to have to adopt all of the European external tariffs, the common external tariff, and they are lower than Croatia's. So there'll be some adjustments there also. What the model cannot do really is estimate what these price changes will be. That's very hard to do. We use sort of reasoned arguments, kind of ad hoc reasoning. It's even difficult after the fact to get estimates like this. I've been trying to look at what happened to Greece when Greece entered the EU, and more importantly, the eurozone. When Greece went into the eurozone, prices went up generally, especially for consumer goods. But for the industries, at the industry level, it's just hard to find price changes. It's hard to find this kind of information. All right. What happens, I'll go ahead and give you the punchline, is that at the industry level, there are big wage changes, big shocks. We project price changes no more than 5% up or down and work in that range. In the model, you can make it 10% if you like, or 15%, and use the same setup and get the projected changes. But with a range of minus to plus 5% for price changes, the wage effects are big in this model, on the order of 15% or so. So noticeable wage effects, 15% up or down, in some industries down. In the industries where price is falling, wages drop, and vice versa. I mean, we know what trade does, right? Free trade is going to increase per capita income. And, if you believe in utility theory, it's going to raise national utility. But for sure, if you don't believe in that, it raises per capita income. No doubt about that. It has other benefits, too, that go beyond this model. But in that higher per capita income, there are winners and losers. And what this model does is let you look at who wins and who loses, and it sort of can guide you through the potential transition process. Also, there's a small increase in the capital return. So capital, that mobile thing that goes between industries, comes out ahead, as you'd expect it would, but not much. There's not a big change there. Now, you can use the model then to project what would happen to labor if it becomes mobile. In other words, let the labor move around, right, and see what happens. And what happens then is that the wage changes are not large. There's a small increase in the wage. So the wage shocks are much lessened if labor agrees to become mobile. Now, in Croatia, that's a big deal. Because Croatians, from afar you might, you think of Croatia, well, it's like this homogeneous place, but it's not. It has 3 or 4 regions, and the people in each region don't like each other much, and they certainly wouldn't move. They would not. Somebody from Zagreb would not even dream of moving down to Dalmatia on the coast to find a job. It's just out of the question, and vice versa. Their cultures are not that. They speak the same language pretty much. But the cultures are different. The religion's the same. Everybody's Catholic in Croatia, but there's strong regional preferences. There may also be other issues that kind of keep labor tied to an industry. So labor mobility is a big issue. I mean, you talk to Croatians about this, and they say, well, and it's just not going to happen. Their argument, talking about labor mobility compared to talking to one of the economists there about comparing Croatia and the U.S. Well, in the U.S., if I found a better job in California, I'd go to California. It doesn't really matter. I'd go to North Dakota or New York. Labor's mobile like that in the U.S. People move around. And he said, well, I think what happened is all the people that had an inclination to move just left Croatia a long time ago. And, they all came here, right? So people that are still there, they're not moving. They're stuck. So it is an issue. It's an economic and a political issue, I think. So our policy recommendation is to encourage labor market flexibility, labor market mobility. An easy thing would be just a lump sum payment. If you agreed to go work at this new factory, or if you change jobs and change locations and change industries, at some level change industries, and we'll just give you $1,000 or $2,000 like a moving expense. And that would be one thing that would encourage labor mobility. Sort of the least harmful tax, let's say, or redistribution to encourage mobility. So here are some of the numbers. The first column shows the share of labor in each industry. So agriculture has 2.9% of the labor. Food manufacturing has 4.2%. In fact, let's look down. If you look at that first column, that's the way to do this, and then go. If you look where labor is, it's in the first column. So 9.5% of labor is in other manufacturing, and so on. So this is a pretty big industry. Most of the manufacturing industries aren't that big, 1 or 2% of the labor force. And then the last column, 15% is in trade. Right, so that's a big industry. This is the whole economy. There you go. Hey, that's cool. I can do that. And then public administration is 11%. Right, that's a big deal. And then education, about 8%, and so on. So it gives you a picture of where the workers are. 6% in construction. Then the other columns, the second column shows the distribution of that other input, that mythical other input. If you look at the third column, that's a little more insightful. That shows the share of the revenue, or value added really, in that industry that goes to labor. So it's like labor's share of the payment to that industry, the net payment to the industry. So agriculture gets 9%, and that's 9% of the share. That's 9% of the income in the industry. So most of the income in agriculture goes to capital, and that's land. Land is included in that residual. In fishing, it's 13%. In food, 35% of the income. 35% of the income in food goes to workers. These are called factor shares. The labor share is big in apparel, and then it's not too big in chemicals. Well, it's big in publishing. Let's see, the other big labor shares are in transport equipment, manufacturing. They make streetcars. That's what they make. These streetcar carriages, and they sell them internationally. Zagreb has these little streetcars. They hold about 20 people, and they put around town. Well, they have electric motors. So they make transport equipment, but they don't make cars. Not good transport equipment, you might say. And so on. If you look at this last column, education has 60%, or 57% of the income in education goes to labor. The last column kind of sums that up, and that's the factor intensity, the capital labor ratio in the industries. Big numbers mean very capital intensive industries. That's agriculture, but that includes land. My impression is that it's not capital intensive in the U.S. sense. I mean, they don't have any like big tractors or anything. It looks like a bunch of little small farms. The small numbers are capital intensive, like mining is capital intensive. And the chemicals is pretty capital intensive. Refining is. There are some big refineries. There's some nuclear reactors too. I'm pretty sure. I thought there was one, although people said they don't have one. It looked like, but it might have been a coal-fired reactor. The small numbers are labor-intensive industries. That's that transport equipment, apparel is very labor-intensive, and those intensities drive the results. They drive the results in the end, and this is what the results look like. The first column shows the projected price changes, and again, we just made these up, right? These are just made-up price changes. Although the paper talks about where they come from, and you can sure use the model to talk about other price changes. The losing, let's go back to the top here. The winning industries are fishing, food manufacturing. This is where Croatia has export opportunities. Real estate, public administration, right, in the EU now, so public administrators. There'll be a lot more of that going on, I suspect. At least the price, in a sense, would go up. Health and social work, higher prices. Hotels and restaurants. Tourism's expected to do well. And that's it, really. The big negative numbers are in manufacturing and apparel. That's not so much. That's with EU competition, but also the multi-fiber agreement is ending, and so Croatia, along with the rest of the developed world, is going to have a hard time competing with China in apparel, and already is having trouble. Manufacturing equipment, they're probably in trouble in that industry. That's an old-line socialist industry. In fact, we ate lunch at an old-time socialist industry. It was the school cafeteria. You know, if you didn't get a chance to go to Russia in the old days, you should just go visit the school cafeteria at the University of Zagreb. I mean, it's just like these, hefty women in white uniforms, and they have this food, just mounds and mounds of food, and it's free. They give it away. The students you don't have to pay to eat. It's a snapshot of socialism. The second column shows the wage changes in the industry, and the thing to remember about this is that they're large. Like, for instance, in fishing, there's a 5% increase in price, but wages jump up 28%. So, and the wage adjustments are bigger than the price changes in the model. That that works uniformly through all of these changes. So we're talking about wage changes on the order of -20, and then let's see for the winners. Well, real estate, they're going to be a lot better off. Hotels and restaurants. So it's going to vary by industry, but the changes will be noticeable. So noticeable wage changes. And that's going to generate, of course, political problems, political issues. Labor unions are pretty strong, and the country's in a transition, so they're not really sure what their labor laws are. I mean, they're writing the laws and trying to create some sort of market economy in the process. The last column shows the output changes. They're similar, but not as big. So the output adjustments aren't quite as big as the wage shocks, but they're big. I mean, a 23% increase in fishing, assuming the fish are out there. Right. And these are a 20% decline in manufacturing when they start having to compete with other European refiners. These are a 10% reduction in mining. Those are traditional industries that have been state supported, and they're going to have to face some adjustments. Transport and telecom decline, although these two probably ought to be split. Telecom you can see getting cheaper. Transport, I don't know. There are issues there. That would be better if it was split up. But we don't have the data for that. And then you see at the bottom the capital return. And that's 1.5% increase. So that mobile input, and what it's able to do is seek out the industries where prices are going up. And of course it always moves because it's offered a higher return. And that happens on net. And so in the end you see a bit of an increase in the return to capital. If labor was mobile, you get the same result. If labor was mobile, what you see is a smaller net increase in wages, and that's why the paper argues for labor mobility. I think in the end that's sort of the bottom line. So should we talk about the economics before we look at photos? We probably should, because I don't have that many photos. And if we don't talk about the economics now, then I'll forget.
And what is the status of price controls and things of that nature over there?
There are, especially in the big industries. There's price supports for chemicals, metals, refining. None of that is open market. The big stuff. On the street, everything's at a market. I mean, if you just go to stores and shops, it looks like Europe, right? I mean, there are little shops and everything's for sale. I don't think they must have a value-added tax, and so there's no sales tax. But I didn't see any evidence of. There would be price variation, from store to store.
Are the big industries, are those nationalized?
Yeah, not anymore. No, they've been sold. Although it's sort of like the Russian story. They were private. They've been privatized. The state does not own them, but ownership. I say that they don't own them outright anymore. Some of the firms are at least partly, if not mostly, publicly owned. So I think now it's sort of a mixed bag. There's still public ownership, especially for the big traditional producers like in the transport equipment, chemicals, and so on. But they've opened shares of ownership to the private sector. Not surprisingly, they're hard to sell. Private investors tend to kind of stay away because the state is still involved. Yeah, I think that's kind of where they're at.
I was thinking about this labor mobility issue over there. It's something that's hard to judge because in my hometown and in my family, there were probably two generations of my family on both sides where nobody left town. Everybody just stayed right there. And then the next two generations, everybody left. There's nobody left there anymore. They spread, throughout the United States. So there was a couple generations where everybody was fixed. Nobody thought about moving or leaving or anything. And then all of a sudden, that equation somehow changed.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Jobs that are available. I've been here for a long time, and we've kept rolling. like textiles hired a lot of people to build many more. And those people are gone all over the place. Henry, is fishing socialistic?
No,
Well,
I don't think so.
Are taking fish
Right.
in the ocean or lakes, wherever.
Right.
They didn't grow those fish.
No, that's right. There may be some fisheries, but I think most of it's small boats in the Adriatic, small private boats.
Don't those fish belong to all of us?
Well, you have to go catch. You have to go catch them, though. I mean,
Yeah.
they're out there.
And
Yeah.
then they sell them back to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there are private, like in Greece now, where they have started these companies that grow their own fish within that area.
Yeah. And there's some of that in Croatia. There are some fisheries, offshore fisheries. Yeah. But I think most of the fishing industry it's not that big a deal in terms of the size in the economy. Of course, it's a big deal if you're in the industry.
It'd be like the people that go out and hunt and shoot deer. They don't grow the deer.
Well, but some of that's on private land. Well, that's an interesting issue. In the Adriatic and in the Aegean, there are sharing agreements. So Croatia's not going to be. It's going to be subject to those EU restrictions on how many fish you can catch.
They pay some sort of tax or something.
They do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, there is in the Mediterranean generally. Yeah. Yeah. John.
I really like the thesis because it's easy to follow, right?
Yeah.
Free capital is going to have a higher return than non-free capital. I'm somewhat interested in how small your number is. Have you done any looking at the issue of risk rate of return? I mean, a 1.5% rate of return on capital seems low to me, given that you're exposed to risk. But I don't know what CDs are going for.
Well, this would be a real rate of return. That 1.5% would be an increase in what's the going real rate of return now. I think that if you're really interested in capital markets, this model is totally inadequate because you have to then look at
would be half of Chicago, right?
because what you can do is flip this model around. What you can do is assume that labor is mobile, and we've looked at these numbers, and let capital move around, this fictional capital. Okay, what happens then is just the opposite. You see capital returns going 20% up, 30%, or not 30, but 15% down, 15% up and down. So in that would be more of an investment type model. Where the capital return is going to be highest, and then what you can do is say, okay, look, if it's a 15% increase in the return to capital in this industry, of course that's where the money's going to go. That's where the investment's going to go. And then you can play it out over a 10-year period and say, okay, given an increase in capital, what's going to happen to production in that industry? It's going to go up, and so are wages, and the number of workers. So
if you've got capital, the prisoners, the labor that won't move, it's going to be feedback.
Yeah.
That's back to the capital.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Croatia has any more of a monopoly on being provincial than any other place.
That's true. Central Europe is full of these little provincial economies. That's right.
But I'm guessing you can proxy that. But it seems to me that if you can do some sort of control with your other EU nations, like, is anybody here surprised that publishing manufacture is going down, right? I mean, everybody, even Croatia, has an internet now.
Right.
It seems to me that if you could somehow control for the losing industries, I'm betting you'd find that your result is even more robust. And that's my point.
Mm-hmm. That's a technical, difficult point. I don't thank you for having to think about that. I'm joking. No, that's correct. That's right. And that of course makes the model more realistic.
Sure. You said that at some point that with Euroization and entering the EU, that in Greece, prices in the economy actually went up?
What I have, the only thing I could find, I've looked for a few days and had other people look. What I was looking for would be price changes for these industries, industrial level price changes. But either the Greeks don't know, or they know and they won't tell, or something. But this is at the EU level, so the EU doesn't routinely do that kind of stuff. There's one guy that's been interested in it but hasn't done any studies yet. What I do have are price changes at the consumer level. They're pretty easy to get because you just survey retail stores. So it's things like apparel, food, other consumer items, housing, the things that go in the consumer price index. And between 1999 and 2004, which is this is in Greece now, when Greece went into the Eurozone, prices went up about 10%. It's about 10% more expensive in Greece than it is, than it was before. In fact, my wife's Greek, and we go there in the summers, and we can vouch for that. She's here now, even back in the back. It's at least noticeably 10% more expensive, and Paul also can vouch that the euros cause higher prices in Greece. Now, wages may have gone up too. And so the question is, are the Greeks better off than they were before? And the answer is, of course they are. Not just for that reason. I mean, they're in Europe now, so the Greece is a whole lot better off now that the Greeks aren't in charge of Greece. And I think the same thing is going to be true in Croatia. That if the Croatians aren't really in charge, they're going to be a whole lot better off.
How can you tell, or where do you measure what prices are? I go out to the Window Mall, and the prices are all over that. You can take a pair of trousers or a pair of shoes,
Right.
go to different stores, and the price not only in the stores but from day to day they vary.
Sure, they're done by survey. In the U.S., the Department of Commerce goes out, has these people, they just go around and check prices, and they do it randomly, supposedly, at retail outlets. And they get their list at the start of the week, and they have a few thousand items to check in a certain location. They go around, write down the numbers, and then they send it all to the Department of Commerce, and they average up the numbers, and boom, there it is. And the EU does the same thing. They're pretty good on average. They're not bad. They're pretty good.
They will have 50 and 70% discounts from one day to the
Yeah, but what happens is it's a random check. You just go to the stores and check. So I think the consumer price index in the U.S. is pretty reliable. I mean, for what it is. Yeah, you have to take it for what it's worth. And the same thing is in the EU. Is it labor? Okay, yeah, it may. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, that is right. It's Department of Labor.
I guess I'm still a little surprised that prices went up when they opened trade. Except for the things that will be
in Greece had been in the EU since 1981. So Greece had free trade.
So it's the euro.
It was the Eurozone thing. And with the Eurozone, prices went up. Now, this is also the time when Greece was getting ready for the Olympics. So there was sort of a boom in Athens. That probably biased the inflation.
Okay. Yeah.
It may not be true in all countries that the euro has made much difference in price. In fact, I think that is true. I think that the euro, from what I've read, the euro has not made any difference in inflation rates, in price levels. I mean, it's made a difference in individual country inflation rates, of course, like the lira, right? And the Italians don't have the lira anymore, so there's no inflation. But if you look at real index prices, they're designed to take out the inflation and just look at the real price relative to other commodities or relative to income. And the euro hasn't really affected price levels in Europe.
What's the relative size of government in Croatia?
The government is smaller in Croatia than it used to be, but it's bigger than it is here. I don't know off the top of my head government spending relative to GDP. Here it's about 20%, and is it 30?
24.
Yeah, I think in Croatia it's probably 30 to 40 in that range, but diminishing. And they have guidelines to hit for EU entry. And I think in Europe they're generally higher than here. It's probably around 30 to 40. So it's going to be in that range to qualify for EU entry. So it's a bigger deal than here, but less than in Japan, where it's 15% maybe, something like that.
How did the getting the entry European economy will affect people who are relying on what they were promised in Croatian money for retirement. Because some of my friends are worried that they won't get very much when they retire because they...
Some of my friends are worried about that here. In fact, I tell them just forget about it. Just don't count on it. I don't know that much about their retirement system. I think it's an issue. What they have are Ponzi schemes. Old time, they have like Social Security, but at the industrial level. So workers, and let's say chemicals in the big industry, they pay into that Ponzi scheme. And the workers pay the retired workers in that industry. So it's sort of industry specific. But the industries have always been protected and subsidized, so there wasn't any chance of failure. So the overall level, I mean, the overall retirement's been very generous. Yeah. Although what would happen typically is that you could retire, relatively early with a pretty good paycheck, but then that paycheck would diminish over time due to inflation. So that's been the old system. The new system, I don't know. They're going to be in the they'll be in the EU Social Security system, so it won't be the old system anymore.
So will they lose what they invested on?
There's no investment. It's just money. You pay money. It's like Social Security here, right? You pay money in, they take the money and give it to somebody else. That's all. It's just it's a Ponzi scheme. It's like a chain letter.
Will they get any money when they retire?
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. They may not get as much as they like.
They have socialized medicine there with the rest of Europe.
Yes. That's right. And even more socialized than Europe, although that's also in some kind of transitional phase. There are private hospitals in Croatia. I had a colleague there, Ed Tower, an international economist, got sick, and he went to a private hospital, a private doctor, and got, good service right away. I think otherwise, it's sort of wait in line.
As an American tourist in Croatia, did you find it a place where things were generally very expensive, or?
Yeah. Let's look at.
Pretty much the same as.
It's cheap. I'd say it's a bargain. We can look. Yeah, even with a weak dollar. Yeah, things are. It's like a 25% discount on average. Food's good. It's good. It's good for tourism. But the Croatians, it's funny because they don't like to admit it. The Croatians don't. They're not hot about the idea of tourism being their major industry. But I keep telling them, man, that's what you have to sell. This is it's too bad you can't see. I guess all the lights are off. It'll go off. Tourism can be a big thing there because this is in Zagreb. This is the first thing you see when you land in Zagreb. Is this huge? You can't really see a picture of how big the square is, but it's a huge square, and it's there are just tons of old buildings and museums. So if you like architecture and museums, I mean, for me it was like a total waste. I'm not that much into history. But there are old buildings and museums and is that better? Maybe not much. Anyway, is that worse? It's worse. But I would tell them that tourism is that's your hope for the future. But they thought the argument was, well, it's cyclical, which it tends to be. And really, you don't get a warm feeling when you visit there. They just don't. Croatians don't like each other much. They don't like their immediate neighbors at all. There's no love lost with the Bosnians or the Slovenians or any of those guys, Hungarians, and they don't really like the Italian tourists. Tourism's totally undeveloped. The hotels that are there are these state-run hotels, and they're just. They've now, you can tell, been privatized. So this guy, we stayed on the coast, he was trying hard, but he didn't have the facilities. It was this old, 1960s institutional type hotel. Just not didn't have it, just wasn't there. But it's in terms of landscape and things to see, museums, they've got it. So it's.
You can get crystal burgers then?
You can get that is a real crystal store. Yeah. That's what I thought when we first went there. I went to see if it had. But, yeah. There is McDonald's, for sure. There is a McDonald's. This is the main square in Zagreb, and it's nice to have a little rock shows and puppeteers and that kind of stuff. This is.
Henry, do they have philoxenia?
What's that?
Well, in Greece, philoxenia, philos is friend, and xenos is stranger.
Love of strangers?
Yes.
You mean generally?
And if you work it right, you can do extremely well in places of tourists. Most tourists don't know.
No, Croatians don't like. They're not that warm. No, it's more Germanic. I think along the coast there's a little bit of that Mediterranean influence, but it's not set up. They're not geared for tourism. I mean, if you look at the last 50 years, they haven't had any, right? So, but things can change quickly too. When the tourists start showing up. This is our apartment in Zagreb. You can see. Actually, it's not our apartment. This is just a building in Zagreb. And I'm guessing it's what, like late 1700s or something. And the city's full of them. There are like thousands of these all over the place with these kind of carvings. Say it again?
What rent did you have to pay?
Oh, the university furnished it. So I don't.
Do you know what?
No. Housing costs, I don't know. No, I don't know.
How much impact does, say, Tito's legacy, or I'm dusting off old memories here.
Yeah.
When I was at Ford Motor Company, Yugoslavia was one of the few folks that actually exported automobiles here. For those of you who don't remember the dreaded Yugo.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
were they better positioned, say, than some of the other folks?
Tito was Croatian. So, but I don't know if that helped Croatia. In Yugoslavia, Slovenia is the outlier. If you look at per capita income, Slovenia's up here, Croatia's down here, a little above Bosnia and those guys. Slovenia's like Italy or something. You go there and it's like, whoa, you're on a different. It's just right, 20 miles away, but it's a much richer country. I don't. In terms of their ability to produce things, I mean, the system's a little bit different, so they're going to have to, mentally get adjusted. And they'll be in Europe, what their comparative advantage is going to be it's hard to say. Picture one. This is a picture from the train station in Zagreb. You really can't see too much the way it's set up. But in fact, Slovenia is right across these mountains in the back.
This is the transportation thing that you...
Yeah, that's the little, let me get down here and you can see it better. That's the streetcar. Zagreb is it's a nice city to visit because you can ride these little streetcars anywhere and they're quick. They're small. Each little car holds 20 people or so, and they run a lot. And they go just anywhere in Zagreb. Zagreb's in this valley, surrounded by mountains, and that makes it easy to get around. So there's not a lot of traffic. Population's 1 million, and you could spend a month there easy. I mean, just seeing stuff. There's enough stuff to see in Zagreb that you wouldn't get bored. It's a little hard to find the restaurants. They don't have signs on the restaurants. It took us like, a week or 10 days to find food. It's like, where's the food? But when you find it, it's good. They have good food. But it's just not, people know where the restaurants are and they go there. They're like little taverns and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that I don't, it's embedded in one of those. Let's see here. This is a street in Zagreb. There are big wide streets and parks with squares that are nice. We were there in May, and the weather was cool some days, and other days pretty nice. It's far north. If you think some of you guys might not know the location. If Italy's the boot. You go up the boot, and then Croatia's like the sweaty part behind the knee, right? That's Croatia right here. If you've been there, you would agree. And I mean, it's a joke, but I like the place. I wouldn't. You should hear my jokes about Greece.
Oh, I've heard so.
This is the ceiling of our bedroom in the university dorm. Actually, it's a ceiling in a museum, and there are hundreds of these things. If you're into that stuff. What's the style called, Madeline? Art Nouveau, from the late 1800s or so. Let's see, I might have skipped one. Let me make sure. This is a nice picture. This is in Zagreb, the main city square. And this is the street market, which is very active. I mean, that's like I like a flea market, and people shop there a lot. There's a big, huge vegetable market, meat market. That's very convenient. And I would say the average person in Zagreb lives out around the edge of the city and then takes the tram into the center, and their job is here in the middle where there are banks and that kind of stuff, government offices. And you shop at the market, and that, clothes and all sorts of stuff. It's very convenient city and kind of fun. You walk a lot there, of course. This is the University of Zagreb. This is the economics building. The university there is spread out over the city. It's not in one place. This is the economics building. The Economics Research Institute's right here. I might have a chance to go there on a sabbatical if I'm lucky next year. But this is the economics building. They have economics majors about 10,000. So it's a European system, and the system is this. You get 7 years to get a degree. During that 7 years, everything is free. Well, not free, but highly subsidized. Housing, food, transportation. They don't need streetcar tickets. All this stuff is like free, right? Okay, when you sign up for a course, an economics course, for instance, you have 7. The 7's the magic number. You have 7 chances to pass the exam, and you can take the exam anytime you like. You don't have to take it, after you took the course. You could take it before the course. You could take it 7 years later. And not only that, the professor's job is to make sure that their main job is to make sure that now we're talking about over 7 years, few thousand students that you have backlogged to pass this course are able to take the test when they want to take it. There are certain dates when you can take it, but there are a lot of those little dates. So, the main job the professor has is go in and look at the list of students set up to take the test on this date. How big a room do I need? How many teaching assistants do I need to proctor the exam, and so on. But a lot of students, I suspect, are just students in name, but don't ever go to class or even take exams, because you have 7 years, right? It's like a 7-year vacation. You'll see a picture of the students in a minute. There are good students there, and the economists on staff were actually good.
Did you say there's 10,000 economics majors?
Yeah. This school is the School of Economics. But that includes business. When you say economics in Europe, you mean business. I mean, it's like finance is like a little trivial part of economics and management. They don't go for that stuff. It's all economics. Marketing is just nothing. It's just 1 or 2 little people. Economics is the main thing. So it's economics and business. In Zagreb's 1 million. Croatia is double. What's Alabama's population? So I think Zagreb's double that. It's like 8 million. 1 million in Croatia, in the capital Zagreb.
How well or poorly received by most of your colleagues at this market economy?
I only talk to the market economists, so I can't answer that.
Okay.
I think well. I mean, you can sort of tell the old line socialists, right? There's these old guys with beards, like the guy sitting right back there, right? I mean, you can tell them, right? So you just, in the hallway, just kind of avoid those people. But the people I worked with were like, they're economists. It is true, though, that what they learned is a lot different. I mean, the style of economics that the typical professor trained in Europe, especially the older guys like me, in their 50s and 60s, it's a lot different. But that's changing. It's changing. And this is my international economics group. I taught a course in international economics and one in microeconomics. So there's junior, senior level courses. And these are the students, and you can see that in Croatia it's a homogeneous group, right? I mean, this is to me like when I was there about a week or two, and I told Madeline this is like the Caucasian homeland. You know, it's like some sort of primitive Caucasian homeland. There are only Caucasians there. I mean, they're big. They're on average big. They're not little people. They're big people. Could be. I suspect.
Henry, is there any interest in Austrian economics and Hayek and that sort of thing over there?
Oh, I think there is in Europe generally, yes, just sort of understood as part of economics and not separated like it is here much. Yeah. I mean, that's just taken for granted. They're right next to Austria, right?
Right.
So, and the style of school is a Germanic school. So they have a PhD program. So at the PhD level, you know, if you have a bachelor's degree, if you can find a professor that wants, you know, to tutor you or wants to have you right under them, then you're home free. That's it. You know, now there are no courses, graduate courses or exams or anything. You just write a book. It's the Germanic.
How many years of subsidy do you get for that?
That's beyond. That's right. That's beyond the 7 that you would have, and I don't know. But I don't know the answer. You get 7 as an undergraduate. It could be 7 more. That's right. Yeah. And these students were good. I mean, you know, this is a small group. Actually, this class had 150 registered, and this is how many showed up. So that gives you an idea of the way the system works. But these are good students. You know, and this is a program that was taught in English, lucky for me, of course, and they wrote in English. It's an English program inside the university, so they were able to take a whole degree now in English. Kind of interesting. They're good students. These are, I would say, this group would compete well with Auburn's seniors in economics. They would outcompete them.
So they can't multiply by that.
Well, yeah, no, I'm talking about seniors in economics. Now, seniors in economics at Auburn are pretty good by that time because a lot get weeded out. They can write about as well, and they'll work. This group would probably work harder. The ones that like economics like it a lot. You know, out of this group, this guy standing next to me. He's good. You know, he's good. She's good. She's excellent. I mean, these are top students. They could go anywhere. They go anywhere in the U.S. That's how they're top students. They could go to any graduate school in the U.S. That's how good they are. And the average was pretty good. She's very bright. And there are other ones too. Those are the cases. This guy he wouldn't leave you alone. He's just ready to talk economics all day. 4 minutes and maybe 4 more pictures.
Kind of selectivity, part of that too, right? The students who are willing to sort of expose themselves to learning economics in a foreign language, more aggressive.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that group in that photo is very good. This was the lady that invited me over. Not really invited. It was a Fulbright grant, so she oversaw it. She applied for the money from Fulbright, and then I just put my name on the list of eligible people. And Fulbright matched us up. A marriage made in heaven, right? And notice, I want everybody to see what's on top. This is after the lecture. Long-term effects of monetary policy equals 0. Right? I made a big deal out of that. Now, this is a picture of Zagreb. This is from the top of the mountain, close to Slovenia, looking down on Zagreb. Picture probably, that's a pretty good view. Big trees. It's big trees, big houses, big people. The scale is large, although it's not a huge country. It's a large-scale country, if that makes sense. This is Madeline and I on our Italian holiday on our way from Zagreb to Greece, because we got to stop over in Italy. So this is our Italian holiday. And then boat. It's very hard to get from Croatia to Greece. It's like the Croatians don't want anybody going to Greece, and probably vice versa, because they compete in tourism. You have to go to Italy first and then go down, right? There's no direct flights, no direct connections. We thought it'd be easy. This is the Croatian coast, the Adriatic coast, going down toward Greece. And you can see the tourism potential. The beaches are very nice. Nothing like the beaches in Greece, of course. But this is Dubrovnik, which is interesting to visit. It's an old medieval type town, and we're looking from in the city up toward the hill, and this little building at the top of the hill was the old Yugoslav fort. And this was in the news, of course. They were shelling this old medieval castle right here for a long time, 6 months or so. They were shelling Dubrovnik, and the local Croatian rebels, of course, they were called, or whatever, freedom fighters. They holed up in this old inside these castle walls, and they were I forget. I mean, they have each spot marked on a map where the mortar shells hit, thousands, and it's a local. They're proud because the walls stood. Here's the wall. They weren't affected by the artillery, even modern artillery. There was some fighting in Croatia with the Yugoslav army, but in the end, not too much. And then, let's see, I'm running out of time in photos. This is not Croatia. This is Albania, where Madeline's dad's from. This is a beach just south of Croatia. This is Albania. We stopped there, maybe not on the way, but we were there during the summer. And I think the rest of the photos are just, let's see, nothing special. Oh, well, I should mention my son, Alexi. He's here. This is where we'll be this summer if he's lucky and we're lucky. He has a bar on a Greek island. This is the Greek island Ios, which is not in Croatia, pretty far from Croatia. But anyway.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. Yep. Thank you. Thank you.